Welcome back to Ferocious Education. This is Zed. Today I'm going to be talking about BVXV. This one is going to be a little bit different than the usual ones because it did drop significantly from the two double digits to a single digit, and it almost officially became back a penny stock. Now, what I'm going to do here is technical analysis is not going to give you much. They're all going to look bearish. A drop like this always going to look bearish. I'm going to use my experience to basically estimate or anticipate what the next movement is, as well as what is the potential news that probably would be coming in after this. So let's jump right into it. Now, when we look into the entire time, all the way back until, let's say, 2019, we get to see the 351s and a little bit towards the $5 all the way back in 2019. Now, it did receive a massive jump in 2020. Not that it was working really on a COVID vaccine, it was working on a multi-strain vaccine. So if we look around this period here, this is probably what we're going to be expecting for it to trade on. But here's the difference, is that at this period of time, it was still going on through the influenza vaccine that it did have. Now, what I can do is I can go towards supports and resistances on this level. But as we go through towards this level that we're seeing right now, supports and resistances don't work all the way back to there. So what I'm going to mention here is basically where I anticipate the supports and resistances to be. So 360 probably is the current support, strong support, because that's where it bottomed out. And then you start noticing it's around 490, so around $5, $6, $7 is going to be every dollar up above $5 and every 50 cents below below $5. That is where I anticipate where the supports and resistances are going to be. Usually that is the case with stocks like this where it sees a massive drop. So now the question is, why did it drop, right? So the massive news on this one here, and I'm going to go through that first, and then I'm going to go back into other SEC filings and how much money they have in terms of capital. So right here, for the M001 phase 3 clinical trial, the company has faced or met its terminal objective, and so results did not demonstrate a statistically significant difference between the vaccinated and the placebo groups in reduction of flu illness and severity, and therefore failed to meet both primary and secondary efficacy endpoints. The study primary safety endpoint was met. And alright, so you're probably thinking, so what? They only cut down one of the pipelines. Well, what about their other pipelines? And that's literally what I thought at start. And so I went back to their presentation. I was desperate to see any other pipeline, right? Other than the assets and the potential they have, I wanted to see, well, maybe they have a pipeline. Maybe they can start working on that more, right? Unfortunately, through their presentation, it really seemed that they have their eggs from one basket. I see trials in phase 1 to 2 all the way back to 2009. So it's more than a decade's worth of work for the vaccine. So what is the vaccine? It's basically a multi-variant strained flu or influenza vaccine. So that is gone. Now comes the question is, what about their facilities? What about their labs? Are they going to either be bought out, or are they going to work onto something else, like a whole different pipeline that they got to create, that they had in the back of their mind after they get the vaccine, for instance? And then the third one here is perhaps they have to liquidate or to work with COVID vaccine production. So we need to think about that. So when I was going on towards their different facilities, I try to get as much as I can from it. So I found that they have the new manufacturing facility that basically has a capacity of up to 10 to 20 million doses in bulk, and it can produce, basically it was made for the production for stockpiles to meet the demand for the influenza vaccine they had. So they were ready to kind of tack onto that market. Now it has failed, so let's discuss what's next. So in terms of coming in what's next, as I did mention, now we need to look into, the first thing is how much money they have. Well, they did have an ATM, an at-the-market equity program that started October 2nd, related to $100 million equity offering. I'm not sure how much of that was closed, but for the sake of the argument, let's say they have $100 million in there. So we're gonna up estimate, then underestimate, just for the sake of the argument. and then they have around $24.7 million in assets, both long-term and current assets. So we're putting them around $124 million around in assets. Around 25 of them, or 125, around 25 of them is covered, and we know it's there. We don't know how much of the 100 is there. 125 million. Not enough to create a whole pipeline and drive the market back up? That's the question we need to ask ourselves. So I did go through different SEC filings, and it seems that everything is about MZ01, which I expect. Now comes the question of, alright, so you have around 100 million, right? 125. How many shares do you have? And we can start doing the math. And so for the ending of it, we do have an amount of 431 shares at the 6 months ended. So when we're looking at 431.5 million shares, definitely that's not the float, by the way. We're looking at perhaps 0.25 per share, or around 0.3 per share. So it's really cents on the dollar when it comes in towards their assets versus their shares. Next thing we want to look at is how much debt they have, right? Their debt is $40.8 million compared to the total long-term assets of $25 million. So the question is it possible that another company like AstraZeneca or JSK or Pfizer or whatever else, they probably can integrate them to it, use their facility for production? You could buy the facilities off, and you can raise money to pay off the debt. But from what we see here is that is almost double as much as long-term assets, aside from the $100 million ADX. With the $100 million ADX, ADM, then it becomes a bit more sustainable. Still don't know. Next thing is the float. Take a quick look into a float, and we get to see around $7 million. 7 million shares for float. We're putting that with 5 million. We're looking at a current market cap of very close to the 50-something million dollars. And it comes in towards, I try to go out to my favorite place, not really sometimes, but Stock Twists. Folks on there are a little bit more active. I didn't want to go on Twitter and start asking, but basically I asked one thing. Give me one argument, or give me an argument to why you're bullish on this stock. And I have here some amazing folks that did message me back. So we're gonna start with Twong757. So my question was, not a bear or anything on this. I need a bullish argument for this one. I know they have facility capital, so they can liquidate, etc., or maybe admit buyout. But what else is there? I'm not sure what the next step is if no pharma giant comes to the rescue. And Twong757 said, as he said, they do have a new manufacturing facility that was designed to mass produce M001 vaccine, but without any other drug vaccine, they have nothing else. Only hope is that they can figure out a way to repurpose M001, relying on a new drug that will take years of development. So that is true. They can try to move somehow M001 to something else. The next thing is their facilities for manufacturing. This person's correct. It can be either leased out to somewhere where they're doing a COVID vaccine and up-ramming them somehow, in terms of a small cost, for instance. That is a possibility. But beyond COVID, you don't really see a big investment potential here, unless they entirely move and pivot for the next 2 decades onto something else. Quarantine for life, and I hope we don't quarantine for life, mate. That their next step is to release a PR to address this situation. I'm sure they have other drug ideas and they have backlogged, but because of how prominent this drug was, everything was centered around the flu vaccine, which is very true. MZ01 was basically their entire eggs in one basket. First rule of business is diversification, and this one has failed on that. And they definitely have some great ideas, and they can put that $100 million in capital to good use. Also, they have 15 years of research that is valuable intangible assets to have that maybe big pharmaceutical companies may want. The manufacturing facility is tangible assets that has not accumulated, no depreciation, and could be used for COVID vaccine production. Now, a buyout is out of question. I agree with you in terms of coming in towards the COVID-19 vaccine production. That is a strong potential. They have assets. I'm not sure if they're going to go towards a whole different pipeline. or trying to figure out something else, but definitely a PR is coming in to see what they're actually planning. Now the question is whether that PR is going to be good or not, and that is the big thing. I mean, I'm not betting money on it, but he has really good arguments there. A buyout could be possible, but when we saw about the liabilities versus assets ratio, it doesn't look good. And Intuit Blue said, honestly, at this point, the most bullish argument is that they have very low float and quite oversold. You know what? He has a good point here. And I was going to mention this one later on in the video. When you look at a low float, and you're going to start, you know, we all know about UAVS and all these other ones that they have massive rumors from pumpers saying, you know, buy this because someone else is going to buy it out, entire company, you know, Amazon's going to buy it. So maybe, you know, maybe Amazon, well, not Amazon, but maybe like AstraZeneca or JSK rumors, or Pfizer, or all these big giants, pharma, start having a rumor with these pumpers saying they're going to buy it. And then you're going to have some people, they're following sheep, so they're going to buy up the price, and they're going to raise it way up, and then that's where you start seeing it jump back up. I'm not going to say it's going to jump back to 40, but I'm saying at least to 20, for instance, or even $10. You might start seeing that massive jump, and you can start day trading it. Now, coming into the question into, well, what am I going to do if approaching the stock? Now, first of all, I don't approach the stock until I see a bottom. But for the sake of the argument, if you want to play and you have enough risk, tolerance, then you might want to do is you want to make sure you watch for volume. So with volume surges going in the right direction, you can start scalping. And I wouldn't scalp your entire profile or your entire portfolio. Don't do that. You try to basically, if I have a portfolio off around, let's say $25,000 and above, I might only be comfortable risking around $1,000 into this. And only in scalps, you know, make $400, $500. Because the potential is, what if this one goes all the way back to, let's say, 10 years ago, one day, where their COVID vaccine, or sorry, their influenza vaccine was barely the start. Their IPO started really around $4 or $5, so we're talking about $3. This one still has a bottom to go. Or, you know, even throughout there, we're not far from that bottom, but we can see a new 52-week low. I mean, the company itself really started the trials in 2009, so by 2015 you already had 5 years of work. Be very careful, and stop limits sometimes don't work if they're overnight. Think about that, gaps down and all that stuff. Be careful and scalp only this one, and try to secure your capital. Have a wonderful day.